Happy Canada Day, Arpin. Happy Moving Day.
Canada Day, yeah, moving day in Montreal, but happy Canada Day, moving day for the Canadiens for sure. I would say a pretty successful July 1 for the Canadiens, even though they did not make any significant free agent signings. Though the ones they did make, while seemingly insignificant, I think are quite significant, but we'll get to that later. So we should start the show. This is like part two of the Noah Dobson episode or show or what the Canadiens did with Noah Dobson. The next shoe to drop is the trading of a young defenseman for a player that has a certain degree of usefulness and upside for the Canadiens. We saw that today with Logan Mayu going to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for Zachary Bzuk. Really like this trade. It's good for Logan Mayu. Apparently, Doug Armstrong told him, you have a job coming to training camp. It'll be up to you to keep it. So this is the clearest path Logan Mayu has had to the NHL to this point, and he's earned it. 2 really good seasons in Laval. And the Canadiens just kind of managed assets in a way that they found themselves with a very useful trade piece to get what looks like is going to be a very useful player in Bzuk. What are your reactions to it?
Yeah, well, Logan Mayu was said that once he saw the Dobson trade, he knew that something was up and that he might be traded. Before that, he had not really put too much thought into it. But when you say that this was the other shoe to drop, I think that you're not alone in making that equation. Yeah. And we were surprised at first that Mayu was not part of the deal for Noah Dobson, because we both expected, I think, that a right-handed defenseman, and most likely him, would have gone the other way. But Mathieu Darche insisted on getting him a lineman, which means that for a team like the Highlanders, who were in a position where, knowing the Canadiens' interest, they wanted some sort of roster player, and they preferred Heineman to Mayu. I think that this is because clearly the Canadiens were ready to move Mayu in the aftermath of getting Dobson. So I think it gave an indication where the market was a little bit for Mayu, that the days of him being like not only a former first-round pick and a right-handed shot the defenseman who shows a lot of promise, but I think that we had to temper our expectations a little bit. But it was good that the Canadiens, were managed to get so much in Zachary Bzuk when the market seems to have calmed down when it comes to Logan Mayu. So they pounced at the right time because they're getting a guy in Zachary Bzuk who scored 19 goals in limited minutes. He had 7 goals, 7 power play goals, which was tied for first with St. Louis. And there's still significant upside, but what's clear to me, whether Bzuk remains a third line guy over time, or he develops his offense and becomes more of a second line guy, that remains to be seen. But it's clear to me that the Canadiens used Mayu in order to replace Heineman. Mm-hmm. And you would listen to Bzuk today say, you know what? I'm fast. I got a good shot. I'm good on the forecheck, and I've been developing my physical game. So, okay, that looks like a guy who could easily, well, not easily because they're not exactly the same player, but there are certain elements that clearly help replacing what you lost in Heineman with Bzuk.
Well, I honestly, with all due respect to Emil Heineman, and I like him a lot as a player, I really like Bzuk's offensive upside more. I mean, Bzuk scored 50 goals twice on a really competitive Quebec Rempart team in the Q. And then not only did he score 19 goals this season, or I guess we could say last season now, that's July 1st, not only scored 19 goals, he over their last 24 games, when the Blues were in a dogfight to make the playoffs, Bzuk scored 13 goals in those 24 games. He led the Blues, tied with Jordan Kyrou, the other rumored Canadiens target, tied with Jordan Kyrou for the team lead in goals over their final 24, which is not a huge sample, but it's more than a quarter of the season. It's the most important quarter of the season. And you have this young kid, this rookie, who was healthy scratched, I think 10 of the first Blues for first 49 games, had a lot of things that he needed to figure out. And just started just diving into the details of the game. And when you talk about his physicality, that's something that came over the course of the season. And by his own admission said it wasn't something that came naturally to him, but he had a lot of great lines in his availability. But the one I liked a lot, which I didn't even use in my story, but one I liked a lot is that he said, it's all about how bad you want it. And I want to play in the NHL so badly that I realized that if I want to do that, I have no choice but to be this physical player.
Yeah.
And, we talk a lot about, with Slavkovsky, for instance, we talk about it all the time. Like, is it really in his nature to be that nasty physical guy? Sometimes you just got to make a decision and be like, well, if I'm not this guy, I'm going to get tossed aside for someone who will be that guy. And if someone's got to do it, then it might as well be me. Well, Zachary Bzuk seemed to make that decision over the course of the season. I remember when the Canadiens showed up in St. Louis, like, he was really in the midst of this run, and the whole team in St. Louis was just really excited about how his game is progressing. And so, I love Emil Heineman, and they do share a lot of the same traits, but you look at Emil Heineman's track record, like, his biggest goal season was he scored 26 goals in 29 games in junior with Lexans. But since then, he's never been a big scorer. Now, he played at a very high level in the SHL with Lexans at a very young age, but his best was 11 goals in 38 games one season. He had 15 goals in Laval last season in 48 games. It's never really shown. While he has all the tools to be an offensive player, I don't know if you disagree, but I never got the sense that Emil Heineman had the potential to one day be a top six player for the Canadiens. I thought he was going to be a tremendous third line player for the Canadiens, but never really felt like this guy can work his way into the top six one day. Whereas with Bzuk, I think that potential exists. It's not a slam dunk, but it's not inconceivable. I mean, it's honestly like I think there is that potential there for him to become, probably not this season, but in the coming years, become a contributing top six player on this team. So in that sense, you trade Emil Heineman, you get Noah Dobson back. Obviously, the 2 first-round picks are the big piece there. And then you replace Heineman with a guy who, has a similar track record. And because I think if Heineman hadn't gotten hurt, he might have challenged Bzuk, although he had 10 goals in 62 games, but he might have challenged Bzuk's goal total this season, because obviously he wasn't the same player when he came back. But I think you get a guy who's a slight upgrade on Emil Heineman, like just in terms of offensive upside. Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And and that physicality that he says now is part of my DNA.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be crucial for him to continue to display that, because he knows that his defensive game still needs work. But it goes to show, though, because if after such a good end to his season, he's the one that the Blues choose to let go in order to get a right-handed young defenseman, it goes to show, what the value that Mayu still had, at least in the eyes of the Blues. It might not have been the same as for the Islanders, but the profile still remains very attractive. And you got to wonder, why is it that they chose to let go of Bzuk instead of some other guy? Why not? Well,
Neighbors? I mean, you look at
or another.
I think Neighbors. You talk about the physicality. Like, Neighbors has that. He doesn't have to manufacture that. The way that Bzuk was saying, like, I have to do this if I want to stay in the NHL. Neighbors, it really is in his DNA. Like, Bzuk says it's in his DNA now.
Yeah,
it's been in Neighbors' DNA. Yeah, that's it, exactly. DNA is DNA, so it actually is in in a guy like Neighbors' DNA. You know, they have Jimmy Snuggerud, who looked really good after coming up from college. They have Alex Texier. They have a lot of young wingers. Even like Kairou's not old. You know, he's just, I think he's 27 or 28 at this point. Like they have, this was their surplus, and this was the Canadian surplus, young defensemen. And so I think in the same way that you ask, why did they let Bzuk go? Someone in St. Louis could be like, why did they let Logan Mayu go? I think they let him go because the piece coming back was something they needed more than the piece going out. And I think Ken Hughes put it super well with Mayu. Like, the thing with Mayu is, you know, the Dobson deal made it more difficult to see a path to the NHL for him in Montreal. And B, you know, when he was talking about Bzuk and what he liked, you know, he's like the potential, but also his style of play. Like, Bzuk's foot speed matches what the Canadiens want in their forward group. They need more speed in their forward group. They have a lot. They want more. And in terms of style of play,
I don't think they think that they've got enough. You know, you say they have
well, that's what I'm saying.
They have
they want more.
Decent amount. I think that they could use more. They were concerned, right. And even especially after losing Heineman, getting guys that are actually, you know, great skaters, they don't have a ton. So at least they're balancing that by adding Bzuk.
And I think from a style of play standpoint, I don't know if they saw Mayu as a potential fit in Montreal in terms of how they want to defend ultimately. And, you know, it's I think we mentioned it on a previous episode, but like at some point, Marty St. Louis is going to go back to the hybrid defensive zone system that he wants to run. It's going to happen. He needs some high IQ players to populate his blue line, or higher IQ players to populate his blue line, in order to do that. And guys who are mobile enough to handle that. And so, I don't know if that was like Mayu. It's obvious what he needs to work on are his defensive reads and just overall his hockey sense, but primarily his defensive reads. A guy who struggles with defensive reads is not going to excel in a hybrid defensive system. I don't know the system they play in St. Louis. I imagine it's some form of a hybrid, but we'll see how he does. And maybe the Canadiens underestimated that part of Mayu's game. Maybe he has learned a lot, and Pascal Vincent was quite adamant about how well he's developed in terms of his ability to defend and his ability to make reads. But I think the Canadiens saw that as something that was going to always be a slight weakness in his game, which just to offset all the strengths that Mayu has. Like, he brings a lot of things to the table that make him an attractive player, and that make him, you know, a legitimate NHL defenseman. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm interested, but it's, you know, this wasn't a matter of dumping Logan Mayu. This was a matter of taking a player that was maybe squeezed out by the current situation and getting a player that they needed, that they had a deficiency or a shortage in Zach Bzuk.